Hey, dear ones. Naomi King here again, and still working with chapter 55 of Isaiah. And I want to talk a little bit about the phrasing from verses 8 through 13. They're very hierarchical, and in the time when it was first spoken and then written down, there's a lot to be said for the sense of stability and the restoration of a sense of how the world is supposed to be operating. Now, Isaiah's people that the prophet was speaking to were displaced. Their world had been turned upside down, and not in a good way. Not for them. It was definitely a loss for them. And so that desire to have things righted is expressed in the text itself. However, as we read it today and we're thinking about what is justice, how do we want this world to be different, that might mean some reimagining around some of this language that's in Isaiah that is an expression of explaining God. But let me begin with verse 8. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares God. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. For as the rain, the snow comes down from heaven and does not return there until it has watered the earth, making it bring forth and sprout, giving seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall God's word be that which goes out from God's mouth. It shall not return empty, but it shall accomplish that which God purposes and succeeds in the thing for which God sends it. And then that section concludes with, for you shall go out in joy and be led back in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall burst into song, and all the trees in the fields shall clap their hands. Instead of the thorn shall come up the cypress. Instead of the briar shall come up the myrtle. And it shall be to the Holy One a memorial for an everlasting sign that you are not cut off from this faithful promise, this covenant. But let me begin with, my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. This is an invitation to humility. The idea that the human mind can encompass that which is unencompassable, that which is infinite. We're finite beings. That so often we end up speaking, particularly in theistic circles, we end up speaking as though we're speaking for God. And this is a prophet here who's supposed to be bringing down God's word and offering that to the peoples. So the prophet here is the one that's speaking for the holy. But think about how often the not prophetic is bound up in the holy in our larger world, claiming that authority. Think about how often in your world that there are those who claim the authority of knowing God's mind as though the mystery is available to be read completely, as though even if you could read it, you would understand all, as though we were, in fact, making God small enough to be ourselves. My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Holy One. Now, of course, we could also say that to one another, right? My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. This is the reality of human diversity. So if you can break it down to just among human beings, we're not going to share the same thoughts. We're not going to share the same ways all the time, right? Or even across the world. Then imagine, if you can, just a little bit further, the idea of this divinity that isn't going to align to exactly what we understand and what we imagine. And yet we're finite. We need to have some sort of understanding. We need to have some sense of connectedness to this great mystery, if we are in fact theists. Now, people who are non-theistic deal very well in life without those connections. But for people who consider themselves theists, we have this relationship with our sense of the holy. And that's going to be defined very much by how we experience the holy in the world, in our lives, what kinds of scriptures, what traditions we have, what cultures we embody and live within, or came from, or are going to, or interact with. And each of these is an invitation to grow and to learn and to stay humble, that as much as we love the holy, we may not know the holy entirely. The invitation to humility is a tough one for a lot of us. Part of that is white supremacist culture, where it's not okay to be less than perfect. Like the idea that perfection means anything less than wholeness, but that we can't make mistakes. We can't have areas that we don't know. We can't try and fail. We can't learn. Perfection prevents learning. Learning is a process of not knowing, of engaging, and of gathering in new information and integrating that into our lives. It is a process of thinking critically about stuff and of really attending to others' experiences around those same concepts. For me, this is a very important reality when I'm sitting with others and talking to them about their beliefs in God. And that is because I can't take on and make God completely in my image. As much as I subscribe to the idea that I am a fragment of an image of the holy, I don't believe that I can be the whole image of the holy, nor can anyone else. I'm very limited this way. And my thoughts about how to embody love or justice or peace, how to practice spiritually, are always being informed by other people's practices and thoughts. I might change mine and I might not. It's so deeply rooted in culture for me. And as I grow older and I engage with even more folks, I'm invited into more and more mystery and quiet and wonder and amazement at all the different ways we engage with this wondrous life, this ground of being, theistic and non-theistic alike. It's an invitation to humility. As I am of the earth, you are of the earth. We are of the earth. And having this shared, so much else is different. We do contain multitudes. Certainly our biomes do. And we might have many different practices from many different cultures and traditions that have become the practices we live in. We might even have different theologies that we've learned to reconcile. It's one of the human being's great capacities, is to find and reconcile what at one point were completely irreconcilable theologies and philosophies. We're good at making patterns and bridges from stuff that might not, in its own context, actually connect. And recognizing that that's one of our great gifts is another invitation to me to this practice of humility, and to really attending to when people claim the mantle to be speaking for God. So You can look at my collar and you can say, well, that one's speaking for God. But I'm not right now. I'm speaking about my understanding of my relationship with this tradition, with this text, and recognizing that it is limited. I am limited. And that my thoughts are not God's thoughts. My ways are not God's ways, in the sense of being all in all. They're just part. A small part among billions of other parts. And that's before we even get to what I understand as a living and vibrant world. The trees and my mycelial networks and all the animals, besides primates, that live in this world. All that lives and communicates is of the holy in my experience and understanding. And I certainly can't know how all that lives and all that communicates is speaking, thinking, feeling, responding. All I can do is sit, attend, and be ready for the wonder to open my heart and my mind in new and different ways as we engage and seek and share this life together. Thanks for joining me.